every time that dog barks at night. I will be recording it and filing a violation notice the following morning. $100 per bark. Show me where in the governing documents it says you can charge per bark. Homeowners Association President Brenda Sterling showed up at the front door of 42 Maplewood Drive and handed the homeowner a violation notice citing 47 individual bark incidents recorded over the previous 3 nights at $100 per bark. A total of $4,700 in fines attached to his deed, and told him that the charges would continue accumulating nightly until his dog was either removed from the property or permanently silenced. She presented the bark count with the same confidence she applied to every fabricated notice she had ever issued. What she didn't know was that the homeowner had installed a professional audio monitoring system 2 weeks earlier that had recorded the actual ambient noise levels inside and outside his property every night since. Recordings that showed her bark counts were wildly exaggerated, that his dog had barely made a sound on most of the nights she cited, and that she had been walking past his property in the dark on multiple occasions in a way that had no innocent explanation whatsoever. Michael Vance, 40, a senior software architect for a technology firm based out of Phoenix, had lived at 42 Maplewood Drive in the Oakfield Ridge gated community of Scottsdale, Arizona, for 3 years. Oakfield Ridge sat in Maricopa County, an upscale neighborhood where the entrance had a staff security booth. The home started at over $1 million, and the manicured streets gave the impression of a community where everything ran smoothly and professionally. Michael had bought his property after years of renting across 3 different cities and had spent his first year renovating the back garden into a landscape retreat, complete with a stone patio and outdoor lighting. He was methodical, quiet, and had never once received a legitimate complaint from any neighbor on Maplewood Drive. Apollo had been with Michael for 5 years, a large, well-trained Labrador retriever who slept through most nights without incident and whose worst habit was stealing socks from the laundry basket. He was licensed, vaccinated, and registered with Maricopa County every year without fail. Michael had never received a noise complaint about Apollo from any neighbor in 3 years of living in Oakfield Ridge, not one, until Brenda Sterling decided he was a problem. Brenda Sterling, 56, had been HOA president of Oakfield Ridge for 8 consecutive years and had developed a particular reputation among residents for finding enforcement opportunities where none reasonably existed. She was precise, relentless, and had an eye for the kind of detail that most people would let pass. She had noticed Apollo the summer before and had made comments at 2 separate HOA meetings about the importance of pet owners being mindful of noise levels in an upscale residential community. Nobody had taken it as a direct threat because nobody had ever received a per-bark fine before. That changed on a Thursday morning in September, when Michael opened his mailbox and found a violation notice itemizing 47 barks across 3 nights at $100 each. He read it, standing at his mailbox in his driveway. Then he read it again. Apollo sat beside him, looking up at the notice with the expression of a dog that had absolutely no idea what any of this was about. Michael went inside, opened his laptop, and ordered a professional-grade audio monitoring system before lunch. Before we go further, what city or country are you watching from? Drop it in the comments. We love seeing where you're tuning in from, and if you believe that finding a homeowner $100 per bark is one of the most absurd things an HOA president has ever put in writing, hit that like and subscribe button and join us here on Karen Conflict. The audio monitoring system arrived 2 days after Michael ordered it, and he had it running by the end of the week. He set up 4 microphones, 1 inside the house near Apollo's sleeping area, 1 on the back patio, and 2 on the exterior of the property pointing outward toward the street. The system recorded continuously through the night and logged every sound above a baseline threshold with a precise timestamp. Michael went to bed on the first night of recording, feeling like he had done everything he reasonably could, and waited to see what the data would show. The second violation notice arrived before the recordings had even finished their first full week. It cited 31 additional barks across 2 nights and added $3,100 to the accumulated balance against his deed. Michael pulled up his recordings for those same 2 nights and listened carefully. Apollo had barked twice on the first night, once at 2:17 a.m. for approximately 4 seconds, and once at 4:50 a.m. for about 3 seconds. On the second night, he had not barked at all. The gap between what Brenda had billed and what the recordings actually showed was not a rounding error. It was a fabrication. Michael saved every recording to 2 separate cloud drives and called a property rights attorney in Phoenix named Harrison Clark, who had handled HOA enforcement cases in Maricopa County for over a decade. Harrison reviewed the first 2 violation notices and the corresponding recordings in a single sitting and told Michael the discrepancy was significant enough to support a fraud claim on top of the standard HOA harassment argument. He told Michael to keep the system running every night without exception and to document everything. The third and fourth notices arrived within the same week, each one citing a specific bark count that bore no relationship to what the recordings showed. The accumulated balance against Michael's deed had climbed past $9,000, and Brenda had begun referencing lien proceedings in her written correspondence. Michael paid nothing and said nothing publicly. He just kept the system running. Then the recordings showed something Michael had not been looking for. On 3 separate nights, each one corresponding to a night Brenda had cited in her violation notices. The audio picked up footsteps on the pavement outside his property between 11 p.m. and midnight. Apollo had responded to the sound on 2 of those nights with brief barking that lasted under 10 seconds each time. The footsteps appeared and then disappeared in the direction of Brenda's house at number 56. Michael pulled his exterior camera footage for the same timestamps and found Brenda Sterling walking slowly past his property in dark clothing on each of those 3 nights without stopping or appearing to have any destination. Beyond the end of his fence line, he sent the full package to Harrison that same evening. Recordings, camera footage, violation notices, and a timeline laying everything out side by side. Harrison called him the next morning and said 4 words before anything else. "We have her now." Harrison Clark requested time at the next Oakfield Ridge quarterly board meeting and got it. Michael sat in the 3rd row of the Oakfield Ridge Community Center on Maplewood Boulevard on a Tuesday evening with his laptop open, and said nothing while Harrison sat up at the front of the room. Brenda Sterling sat at the board table in her usual seat, HOA lanyard, clipboard. The composed expression of a woman who had been running these meetings for 8 years and had never once lost control of one. Harrison opened without preamble. He told the board he had been retained to address the violation notices filed against his client at 42 Maplewood Drive, and that he had evidence he wanted to present directly. He connected his laptop to the room's display screen and played the first audio recording. A full night of ambient sound from Michael's property on one of the nights Brenda had cited in her notices. The recording showed Apollo barking twice. Brenda had billed for 19. The room was quiet. Harrison played a second recording, then a third. Each one corresponded to a specific violation notice. Each one showed a fraction of the bark count Brenda had submitted. He then pulled up the exterior camera footage of Brenda Sterling in dark clothing, walking slowly past 42 Maplewood Drive at 11:47 p.m., at 11:52 p.m. on a different night, and at 12:08 a.m. on a third. Apollo was audible on the recording, barking briefly in direct response to the sound of footsteps each time. Then Harrison told the board that his client was not the only one. He had been contacted by 3 other dog owners in Oakfield Ridge who had received identical per bark notices from Brenda over the past 18 months. He placed their documentation on the table in front of the board, one folder at a time. Brenda Sterling had not spoken since Harrison began. She was looking at the display screen showing her own face on a camera time stamp that read 11:47 p.m., and she had nothing to say about it. Harrison closed his laptop and looked at the board. He said one sentence. "We will be filing in Maricopa County Superior Court on Friday." The lawsuit was filed in Maricopa County Superior Court on Friday morning, exactly as Harrison had promised. It named Brenda Sterling personally and the Oakfield Ridge HOA Board. As a collective body, the filing cited fabricated violation notices, fraud, harassment, abuse of HOA authority, and the documented pattern of nighttime surveillance that had been used to provoke and then bill for the very barking. She was complaining about the 3 other dog owners Harrison had mentioned at the board meeting filed their own supporting complaints the same week, each one with their own documentation, their own discrepancies, and their own camera footage. The Oakfield Ridge HOA Board held an emergency session the following Monday and removed Brenda from the presidency before the meeting reached 20 minutes. They hired an independent attorney to represent the board separately from Brenda and commissioned a full audit of every enforcement action she had taken during her 8-year tenure. The audit found that Brenda had issued per-bark fines to 11 separate homeowners over 3 years, collecting over $60,000 in payments from residents who had paid rather than fight. Every dollar of it was now part of the legal record. The Maricopa County Superior Court ruled in Michael's favor on every count 4 months later. Every fine issued against his deed was declared unenforceable and dismissed in full. The fraud finding, supported by the gap between the recorded bark counts and the billed amounts, resulted in an order for Brenda to repay every fine she had collected from all 11 affected homeowners with interest. The damages awarded to Michael personally covered his legal fees and additional compensation for the sustained harassment and the documented provocation of his dog. Brenda Sterling sold her home at 56 Maplewood Drive. Before the repayment order was fully executed, the financial consequences of 11 homeowners' worth of refunds, legal fees, and civil damages left her with no viable alternative. Michael Vance turned off the audio monitoring system the week the judgment was entered. Apollo slept through every night after that, without interruption, the same way he always had before any of this started. If this story reminded you that documentation is the most powerful tool a homeowner will ever have against someone who is counting on you not to notice, share this video with someone who needs to hear it today. And if you have ever been fined for something that never happened the way it was reported, drop your story in the comments because we want to hear it. See you on the next one, right here on Karen Conflict.